Hey, everybody, welcome to Two Out the First. It's June 25th, 2024. I'm Ryan Ballingy. Thanks for being here. We've got plenty to talk about, specifically around a Monday qualifying legend that happened kind of late into the day yesterday for the Rocket Mortgage Classic. I don't want to steal all of Ryan French's thunder, but we'll spend a little bit of time talking in his domain about Monday qualifying for the Rocket Mortgage Classic. Some comments from Martin Kaymer that I think are interesting, and then we'll talk a little bit about Charlie Hall continuing to be a tremendous gem in press conferences. I'm Ryan Ballingy. Again, thank you for being here, whether you're watching live, whether you're listening after the fact. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate it. You can get a hold of me, Ryan, at thegolfnewsnet.com if you're a podcast listener. And, of course, if you're watching live, you can subscribe to this show as a podcast so you can catch us after the fact. All right. So yesterday is a Monday qualifier for the PGA Tour. They're the Rocket Mortgage Classic this week, and they're at the Detroit Golf Club in Michigan. Sounds like it's going to rain for several days this week. Golf course is going to be plenty soft, lots of scoring opportunities available. We want to talk about the tournament a little bit after we get through the Monday qualifying piece. But this was the first event on the PGA Tour in a month to have a Monday qualifier. The last one was the RBC Canadian Open. Then you had your signature event at the Memorial. There's no Monday qualifier for that. You have the U.S. Open. There's no Monday qualifier for that. You've already got the qualifier, right? You've already done all of that ahead of time. But once you've done that piece of it, there's no Monday qualifying component to the U.S. Open. And then you had the Travelers last week, another signature event, no Monday qualifier, even though last year they did have a Monday qualifier when it was still a full field affair. And that was amazing. I wish they would have Monday qualifiers again. And we'll get back to that around the signature events. Still, you had no Monday qualifiers for the last 3 weeks. So we get one for the Rocket Mortgage Classic. It's already a tournament that is considered, it's one that's considered weaker, right? I mean, there's only 10 of the world top 50 competing this week compared to, I think it was 44 or 43 once Rory withdrew last week. But you had pretty much all of the eligible top 50 in the world competing in the $20 million event. And you've had that for the last several weeks running. And this week you didn't have, you're not going to have that. That's not what's going to happen here. And so you've got young guys being invited, Michael Thorbjornsen, Shipley. You've got Miles Russell, the 15-year-old who finished T20 in his debut on the Korn Ferry Tour. Like, you've got a lot of young players being invited to this event. They have decided to kind of make that connection to younger players, collegiate players. The John Shippen event awards a spot in this field to the winner. There's a bunch of opportunities for younger players to get involved. And I think that's a good way to lean into it, especially because you're about to start this stretch of events where, you're going to have 6 events basically to try to qualify for the FedEx Cup playoffs. And this is kind of where panic should start to set in. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Anyhow, so you got a Monday qualifier, right? You're on a public golf course playing this Monday qualifier. There are only 61 players in this field for a 4-spotter. Typically, if you look at the Monday qualifiers, especially earlier in the year, you kind of get 90 to 100 players, maybe 80 toward the low end, but you're really talking like a 100-player field fighting for 4 spots. And that's a lot to get through in a single 18-hole round, right? You got to but you're also stacking that field with tons of players who are PGA Tour alums or have some kind of Korn Ferry Tour status or some kind of past status at some point, way, way, way down the priority order in the PGA Tour's priority order. This wasn't quite that thing. I mean, I'm not saying there weren't good players playing in this. There were, but there were only 61. So your chances were a little bit better. And you're still playing for 4 spots. So, get out there and go play. And I don't even know how to pronounce Nick's last name. The tour misspelled it as Bienz. It's B-I-E-N-Z. Bienz? So I'm butchering that. I've been trying to find the proper way to pronounce his name. Amid all the coverage last night from Ryan French from Monday Q Info. And shout out to Ryan. He's fantastic. You should check out his stuff. Subscribe to his stuff, mondayqinfo.com. You can find out about subscription there. I think it's $50 a year. Very reasonable for everything that he does, especially in this kind of underserved coverage area of the game. But anyway, so Nick comes in. He's a Golf Galaxy employee. Nick has never, ever tried to qualify for the PGA Tour or any kind of similar type event. He's tried to play in like state opens. He's a good player, but I mean, he's working at Golf Galaxy. Like, he's working a retail job while also trying to just kind of live his life. He's fairly young guy, goes out, plays, gets through the pre-qualifier, right? And typically in a Monday qualifier, if you have never done this before, if you've never gotten through any kind of stages of qualifying, play on the PGA Tour, Corn Ferry Tour, your first stop is a pre-qualifier. So before you even get to the Monday qualifier, you've got to get through the pre-qualifier. So he got through that stage, get into here. He goes and shoots 65 on this course, which unto itself is amazing. And it looked for a while like he was going to get in without even thinking about a playoff. And then that turns out not to be the case. He's not in the playoff or not in clean. He's got to go into a playoff. But after he shoots the 65, there's no one else in the house on that number yet. So there's no guarantee of a playoff. He sits in really good position. And it turns out he's going to sort of celebrate, but also at the same time, really just try to calm the nerves a little bit because there's a lot on the line, right? I mean, if you're making your PGA Tour debut, you have done something incredible, right? A huge, huge accomplishment. And he's sitting down at the, kind of under the veranda, it looks like. And I think Ryan came over to talk to him, said, hey, great round or whatever. And then Nick kind of explains like, hey, I'm just drinking beers right now. And I'm drinking beers because I'm worried that I'm going to vomit all over myself if I don't just calm myself down with a couple brews. And then it turns out he does get into the playoff. So there is a playoff. So you wind up getting 4 guys who shoot, actually more than 4 guys. There's 5 guys who shoot 65. So you got Nick, Danny Guiz, Angelo Jantsopoulos, he's Canadian, Brandon Barry, and Bo Brell. Those are the 5 guys who shoot 65. Well, now you've got a playoff 5 for 4. And now you've got to play extra holes until you knock out, who you need to knock out. And this thing goes on forever. I mean, forever. Hole after hole after hole, guys not getting knocked out. But in the end, Bo Brell is the guy that gets knocked out, and the other 4 guys get in the field this week. And it's just kind of one of those. I mean, I'm sure all of these guys are accomplished players in some way. Nick went to the school formerly known as Uipui, IUPUI. I always mess that up. And he just an endearing guy. I mean, just based on the conversation with Ryan French, and he's going 1 for 1. I mean, I think that's the thing that really stands out to me is he's a Golf Galaxy employee, and he goes 1 for 1 to get into the PGA Tour first try Monday qualifying. And I've tried to qualify for big tournaments before. It's been a long time since I've tried this, but this was 12 years ago. I tried U.S. Open qualifying. I came back from the Players Championships, covering for Golf Channel at the time, and came back and tried to get through local qualifying at a club not too far from here, about 30 minutes from here, called Four Streams. And I never played the course, never seen the course, which was a big mistake. I didn't prepare the week before. I was covering a tournament, also a huge mistake. But I showed up and didn't play well, but I felt so incredibly nervous. And I didn't even do anything. I mean, I got to the first tee, and my hands, I couldn't feel them. They felt cold, and it was a 90-degree day kind of thing. And that was the first tee shot. And all of a sudden, everything that you kind of block out when you don't play competitive golf, right? When you don't play tournament golf, the trees, the high grass, some of the bunkering, stuff that you just goes out of the frame. It's not even in your mind when you're playing for fun. All of that stuff all of a sudden comes right into your field of vision. And for a guy to kind of come off of playing, a shift at Golf Galaxy probably the day before, a couple days before, to then go play this event, I'm sure he didn't have a ton of time to prepare. And he then goes and shoots 65, gets into a PGA Tour event. Just incredibly cool stuff. It's one of those things that is unique to golf, right? What other sport can you qualify to play against the best players in the world if you do well enough in an 18-hole event? And really, in Nick's case, you're doing another 18-hole event. So you're 2 rounds of golf away from playing 2 rounds on the PGA Tour. If you think about it, now obviously it's a lot more daunting than that. But in no other sport can you really do that. Like, I couldn't show up to Wimbledon and be like, hey, where's the Monday qualifier? And if I got lucky and beat some people that were probably better than I was, but in variance I could beat them once, I am then in Wimbledon. That doesn't happen. I can't show up to a Washington Wizards game and be like, hey, you guys need a 13th or 14th for tonight? If I make 5 threes in a row, can I be on the team for tonight? That doesn't happen. So this is just a super cool story because golf is unique in that regard. And I think it's even cooler because we haven't had a Monday qualifier in a month. And Monday qualifiers matter. They are important. They're great. They're special about the sport. And what has happened because of the change in the signature series, Travelers no longer has a full field event. There's no Monday qualifier. RBC never had one. Wells Fargo had one. There was a Monday qualifier for that. First year when they had the signature events, the Monday qualifier for the Phoenix Open was the craziest thing I've ever seen. I mean, it was basically a lottery ticket to a $20 million event the first time that had happened. They're still playing for $9.2 million this week. That's not a joke. That's not a crappy amount of money to be playing for. The winner gets $1.656 million. Not saying Nick's going to go and win himself a PGA Tour title this week. That's the last thing that's going to happen, right? His odds are probably like 5,000 to 1, 3,000 to 1 or something like that. And that's only because they wouldn't want to make him 25,000 to 1. But he gets a chance to compete against some of the best players in the world this week. And shout out to Kevin Kistner, who showed up on social media and said, hey, pair him with me. I want to play with that guy this week. I want to talk to that guy. I think that's great. Ryan just tweeted just before we went on that they've raised something like $13,000 for him through Venmo. I sent him $25. Hey, go have a great week. A brewery called Garage Beer sent him $500. In honor, obviously, of drinking the 3 beers. I don't think he drank Garage Beer, but hey, now he can go stock up the fridge after a great week. He's obviously not working this week at Golf Galaxy. Not that he was working for $6,000 an hour or whatever, but he's not doing that. So he gets that opportunity to kind of make that back pay plus then some if he wants to kind of pursue this a little more. After all, we are in the time of year where you could go try to play the 3M Open Monday qualifier. You could go try to qualify for the new event it's the old event, but the Oppo Field event in Kentucky against the Scottish Open. And those aren't especially far drives for someone who's in Michigan, right? You could go do that, or you could hop on a plane and go play in them. But he can do it. He can do it, which is really, really cool. I love that. I love everything about that. I wish we had Monday qualifiers into some of these signature events. I realize that the PGA Tour wants the best of the best, but what's wrong with having a guy like Nick in there every once in a while? I mean, this doesn't happen all the time. This isn't a thing an epidemic of guys who work at Golf Galaxy and Second Swing Golf and stores like that showing up and getting in Monday qualifiers. And even if so, that's freaking awesome. That's incredible that you can be that good at golf part-time for one day and get onto a PGA Tour event. Kudos to Nick. Kudos to him for doing it. I think that's tremendous. Crush it out there this week, man. I hope you do everything you set out to do and make some money. If you make the cut, you're probably making $20,000-ish. So that's goal one. If you make the cut here, you're going to walk away with at least $35,000 between the stuff that people Venmo you and the money you would make in the event. Hopefully, Golf Galaxy logos him up, pays him for the week. He's going to get a ton of TV time because of what he accomplished. Hopefully, Dick's Sporting Goods, which was the sponsor of the Champions Tour last week, they own Golf Galaxy. They put some logos on him. They should get him into a commercial, for crying out loud. Like I'm a guy helping you at Golf Galaxy. I just play on the PGA Tour. I mean, that he should make $100,000 out of all of this if it's done correctly and justly. He's going to go on the Pat McAfee show. I don't know when Pat's show airs, but the McAfee show is on, I think, right now. So he's on there. He's going to get a huge rub from that. That's great. I'm sure there'll be even more money to raise for him. This is just really cool. Kind of a one of us type moment. Bang, one of us, but he's so much better than all of us if you're shooting 65 like that and just doing it in an 18-hole situation. One try, one look at it. That's amazing. Really, really cool. So, all right. Second story for the day, a little bit shorter than obviously the first, which I really just wanted to gush about. But Martin Kaymer talked with, I believe Bunkered it was, so I'm sorry if I messed up the publication that had this, but I think it was Bunkered. Might have been elsewhere, but I think it was Bunkered. And that they're over in the UK, and they do a good job. And Kaymer was talking with them in some kind of interview, and all kinds of random questions come up, but very interesting to hear questions lobbed at him about the PGA Tour PIF negotiations, because we don't typically hear from kind of the rank and file, and I don't mean that to be mean, of LIV. I mean, I know Martin Kaymer is the captain of a team and has equity in a team and whatever, was a big signee at the time. But in the grand scheme, he hasn't really threatened to win, and he hasn't won really anything in like a decade. So for him, being involved in Live was not necessarily as risky of a decision. He got paid off, multi-time major champion, a players winner. He gets the guaranteed money, gets to play for, he's going to make $100,000 at least most weeks. He's one of those players that's in danger, right? Because he doesn't have an exemption on the PGA Tour. That's gone. The 5 years he got for either winning the U.S. Open or the Players, take your pick in 2014, that's long gone. He's got past champion status, perhaps. But if Liv goes away, and whatever that looks like, he's one of the first people to be directly affected. Because once his contract ends, he still can have some stake in Liv if they keep it going, if that's part of it. If they don't, and they just fold the whole thing, then what he's got equity in is kind of meaningless. And surprise, that happens in a lot of startups. You get meaningless equity that just becomes worth zero eventually. But the allure is if you stick with it and it works somehow, then you get paid off by your faith. That's what happened with Back Nine Network. I had equity shares or equity offerings. I could buy equity at certain prices if I wanted, if I thought it was, and I could execute it pretty much any time if I thought that it was going to work. The options obviously never turned out to be worth anything. And that's effectively what Kaymer has in Liv. He's got options. If this thing works and all of a sudden it's worth a ton of money and it's integrated in the PGA Tour model and all kinds of things, then he gets paid off even more for his faith in this concept, his willingness to be involved in the concept. But if it doesn't work and the Saudis like, yeah, forget this. We'll fold Liv. None of that matters. We'll integrate some kind of team thing into the schedule. We'll call it Liv, blah, 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 blah. That if that happens, then Kaymer's equity becomes meaningless, useless, but he still got paid. And so he's talking to Bunkert about all this, and he says basically he doesn't understand why there hasn't been some kind of common agreement here. For the common good is the term that he used. And he said, maybe I'm just being greedy, but basically what gives? Why hasn't this been done yet? And I think that's the first time I've really heard someone from Liv say something kind of not derogatory, but something negative about why hasn't this been done yet. Bryson has said after the U.S. Open, I wish this would come together quickly. I think Brooks is kind of like, hey, let's get this crap over with. John Ramos kind of said, I would love for this to come together. Basically insinuating I signed with Liv in the hopes that this would lead to an agreement, and nothing has happened yet. When is the agreement happening? But Kaymer is kind of really that first guy that's kind of that I've seen that's come out and said, hey, like, why isn't this happening? And I wonder why that is, because as I've talked about before in the show, if you're a Liv guy, you want Liv to last. Like if you're not one of the players who got paid a zillion dollars up front and are crushing it in the league every week, you don't want the PGA Tour to absorb Liv. You want Liv to continue to exist primarily because you're going to get guaranteed money every time you play. All 14 times you play, you're getting guaranteed money to be good, bad, or indifferent. Sometimes you're going to be good, you're going to make a lot of money. Sometimes you're going to be bad, you're still going to make pretty good money. And that's what the ideal scenario is for kind of also ran on a 10-person tour. Not saying, again, he's not accomplished things, just he's not really competitive week to week on this tour. So I guess my question is, why is he saying that? Is that because he's worried that Liv will go away? Is he worried about the health of it if there is no deal? And I obviously cannot speak to that. I don't know the answer to that. But if there's no deal done, is there this worry from players like Kaymer on Liv that all the money goes away, Liv ends if that doesn't work out, and that's the end of it? Then they've got to go find a way to go play somewhere else, whether that's the Asian Tour, DP World Tour, try to find your way back to the PGA Tour through Q School or some other means. What is that? I'm starting to wonder if that worry is legitimately out there for Liv players, especially the ones without PGA Tour status that they could claw back or petition for after some kind of penalty if there is an agreement, and if Liv just goes away, they can petition for it. I think that's something to keep an eye on, something just to think about. Not spend a lot of time dwelling on it, but just something to think about. So there's that. And then lastly, I wanted to talk about this kind of follow up on yesterday's comments. This kind of Scotty Scheffler getting dragged thing. They kind of started with a guy named Matt Vicenzi, who he's part of a podcast called Lost for Words that airs on GNN Radio, but drew a lot of criticism and kind of a bit of, I would call it a bit of engagement farming. There's nothing wrong with that. I've done it before. I'll do it again. But talking about his belief that Scotty is beating up on a weakened PGA Tour and his wins don't mean quite as much. And Tiger's era, he beat Els and Mickelson and VJ and Davis Love and Duval, those guys like that, which by the way didn't beat him every time. But then he came out today with his own ranking. He said, kind of off the cuff, here are my top 35 players in the world. Here are 13 of them that are on live. And then Rufus Peabody, and you may not know Rufus, but if you're in the sports betting world, you know Rufus. He's one of the best golf bettors there is. He's a very sharp mind about the sport, thinks a lot about it. And he does a very good job of analyzing fields and bets and all kinds of those different things. And Rufus said, well, here's your top 35. Here's where the top 35 in the world is compared to the OWGR. Well, he didn't put that in his graphic. Compared to Data Golf, which does a strokes gained based ranking and does some other tabulations and then his personal ranking. And Rufus's is different than Data Golf's, especially once you get outside the top 10. Like that's really what a ranking scale is for, your top 15 to 20 players. And then after that, it's a lot of marginal stuff. But it is interesting to me to kind of use numbers, use data to tell you who the best players in the world are, and then try to compare that using your gut. And the odds are your gut is wrong. And you might have your bias. You might have, whether that's you want to prove a point, whether you like Live, PGA Tour, you like certain players, you dislike certain players, whatever that is. But data tells the story. And it turns out that I think the OWGR and Data Golf and Rufus, to a large degree, have it right. Now, the OWGR, if you included, Bryson, all of his live stuff, he'd probably be higher, like third, fourth in the world. John Rahm would probably be, where about he is, fifth, sixth in the world, just constant top 10 finishes kind of stuff. But, once you get outside of those finer finer top 10, then it gets difficult pretty quickly. So it is very interesting to me to see the back and forth about this of, well, here's what I think, here's all the live players that I think are great. And here are all the PGA Tour players I think are not great. And once you get past, I would challenge you to do this, whether you care about golf betting or not. Name for yourself the top 15, 20 players in the world that you think. Then go look at the OWGR and Data Golf and see where they rank them. And I promise you, once you get past 10, there might be some wild differences. If you went down to 30, there'd be really wild differences. So consider that when you are thinking about all of this, thinking about evaluating players, thinking about this era that Scotty Scheffler is dominating, all of those things. Think about that when you look at players and who's worth what and what means what and how you value what a player means, because there are different valuations to apply that as well. All right, that's going to do it for us today on the show. Thanks so much for watching. If you watch live stream, appreciate it. If you're catching us on a podcast after the fact, thank you so much for doing that. We'll be back with another show tomorrow. This was a little early today. We're trying to do 1 p.m. Eastern time for these shows, but I want to have a call scheduled for today. I think I have one for tomorrow maybe. But try and do this around 1 p.m. Eastern, kind of make it a Goldilocks time for everybody. Well, I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about. And if not, well, then we'll just do a voice-only version of this show. But we're going to try and do this Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then leave the rest of the week to the actual golf being played. If you catch us as a podcast, leave a 5-star review. Helps us reach more people. I'm at ryan@thegolfnewsnet.com over email, Twitter, Threads, X, Instagram, and Blue Sky at Ryan Ballengee, Facebook and YouTube, Ryan Ballengee Golf. Thank you again for watching or listening. Talk to you next time on 2 Off the First.